upgrade project. The project will be split into two bids, the first being labor for the demolition and reconstruction of the lighting system, and the second being the acquisition of the poles, fixtures, wiring, and conduit. The public will be given an opportunity to provide input on the style of pole and light fixture. Cost estimates range from $85,000 to $430,000. The attached reports.
Thank you, Robert. The Electric Commission has been working on this issue for quite a while. We looked at it as an opportunity since the street's going to be widened or is going to be disrupted. The lights are going to have to be moved one way or the other, as maybe this is a chance to make the street lights uniform. If you look across the spectrum of the road, coming from the north, there's what they call acorn type lighting on the bridge. As you get over the bridge, there's wooden poles, and then as you get into the downtown area, there's metal poles, which are fairly new and are still somewhat serviceable. There's a few of them that are rusted out and will have to be replaced no matter what. And part of the concern we have is, what should we do? Should we standardize all the lighting using the steel poles? Should we look at some sort of decorative type lighting? As you can imagine, there's a million different options that were looked at and considered. We brought in a group of downtown business folks to take a look at the issue and give us their advice. Their suggestion was, now's the time, if the streets are going to get tore up and we can afford it, we should go to decorative lighting. No matter what, the commission has directed us to put LED heads on all of the lights, no matter what they are. Those are they're about the same price as the ones that we have right now, and they last a lot longer, and they're use a lot less electricity. So that part of the decision, I think, has already been made. The question really is the conduit, the PEDs, and what type of pole that we're going to install. The two options that they settled on was to look at the teardrop style of lighting. If you look on the back page of this agenda, it would be number one, the light number one. That's the teardrop. Again, it's not the exact light fixture that we're looking at, but that's the style of it. And then the other option that we looked at was just replacing the wooden poles with steel poles. At the end of the day, the commission felt that we should go with the decorative lights. There's still time. I think there's a six week lead time.
6 to 8 on ordering poles.
On ordering the poles, so we still have a little time. We're going to use that to have a lighting salesperson come in and have maybe 5 or 6 different types of poles, put them around the room here and invite the public, give them a couple hours to come in, take a look at it and see which ones that they would favor. And the commission will take that into consideration as they make their decision in July.
How closely does what's the word, reflect on the bridge lights?
They could be very close, except for they'll be a lot taller.
Yeah.
Just no one on the commission felt that the acorn type lights were what they were interested in.
The acorn lights, like on the bridge, yeah, just gives you a different feel than having a light coming up over the top of you, kind of like a runway light almost.
So, and then option one is something like Spring Grove has, close maybe?
Yes.
Or Lacrosse?
Yes.
It's similar to that, just
Not exactly, but yeah, it'll be close. The light will come down. The reason that we split the bids up are because we can order the materials and we can save the markup on the conduit. We're hoping we can reuse a lot of the conduit holes and the poles and all. We'll purchase some and store them ourselves until it's time for the install. So we can save, he thought, anywhere from 5 to 8% of the project cost by reusing it. And his estimate of option one was 430,000, and that's the all-in cost, and they inflated it. So if we split and do the purchase of the equipment ourselves, that'll bring that number down. If we reuse conduit, that'll save us some money as well. And the reason that we asked Mike to stay was just if there's any questions about financing, because the commission is interested in using some of its reserves to spend down the project, and then using the balance maybe with local placement for the balance of the money. And Mike assures us that that's not a problem.
Or placement with someone.
Or someone.
If the local banks would be interested. You want me to just pipe in here?
Go right ahead.
On some thoughts, okay. First of all, for the council, it's important to understand that electric debt, unlike all the other debt of the city, which can carry your general obligation pledge, like the bonds we just approved, your electric debt cannot carry the general obligation pledge. In fact, when we talked about ratings with the city and whether we did that or weren't going to do that, if we were to deal with your electric utility, it wouldn't just automatically take on the city's general obligation rating, it would get its very own rating. I'm not suggesting you get a rating, I'm just letting you know that it's considered sort of a separate thing than much of the city's regular operations. So when you go to issue electric debt without that general obligation pledge, oftentimes to help make the placement of that debt possible, you have to provide some covenants, some promises. And the city does have some existing electric debt in which you make some promises. And one of those promises was you would not issue debt, electric debt in the future on what we call parity, unless you can meet certain debt service coverage ratios. And what I mean by on parity is, I mean, who gets dibs? The bond issue you've already got, those folks that bought that get first dibs at your revenue, okay? And then if we were to issue a second piece of debt and not meet certain debt service coverage ratios, then these owners, these purchasers would be subordinate to these folks, okay? So the debt service coverage ratio is 125%. So what I have to do is I look at your net operating income, figure back in depreciation, because that's a non-cash expense. Look at your existing bond payments, throw in the projected bond payments, and hopefully that number should be 125% or more. Based on your 2013 audit and some guesswork as to what you might borrow, we can do it. We can do it on parity. If we had to do it with subordinated debt, you would pay an even higher interest rate, because these folks would be a little more at risk because they'd get second dibs. Whereas if we can show the debt service coverage ratio, now both parties get equal dibs, and the interest rate should not be penalized in that regard. Now, in terms of sales method, what was the project roughly?
It's about 430. We were thinking
some thousand.
spend 2.5 to buy it down, so it'd be the balance.
So you're talking about 200,000, somewhere in there. That's a small issue. And when you get to small issue, you saw how expensive it is to do a bond issue, right? You saw thousands of dollars a bond. When we get into the small size bond issue, it's all about controlling issuance costs, not necessarily interest rate. You know, we might allow 20 basis points, 40 basis more on the interest rate if we can get the issuance costs where we want them.
Also a shorter payoff time.
Or shorter payoff time. So one option would be, instead of going to open market where this thing is gonna be pieced up and resold, and basically somebody's got fingers in your pie there, we might place it fully with a local bank, or a combination of two banks, or if the local banks don't have an appetite, an area bank, or any bank, wherever, it doesn't matter, but we find a place. I'm confident in our ability to do that. The electric looks pretty nice. Another option, and we'd have to get an exception to this, but Minnesota Rural Water Association runs some low-cost programs. They have a program, it's called the Micro Loan Program. $250,000 or less, 7 years or less payback. Total issuance cost will be $4,800. Now compare that to what you just looked at. That's everything, soup to nuts. Fiscal, bond attorneys, everything. Now generally that program only allows for general obligation debt, so you have to get a program exception to do electric revenue.